Just so wonderful to be back with you. Thank you, Reverend Darlene, for inviting me back and trusting me with your community to speak and to be spoken to. This is interesting because I think the last time I was here was 2 years ago, 2015, and so things have really changed. I was living in Los Angeles at the time and working the same types of jobs that I work now. I do a lot of work with youth. I do a lot of work with prisons on emotional literacy. And I was also a member of the Agape International Spiritual Center with Dr. Michael Beckwith. And so my life was full. And then all of a sudden, summer of 2015, I get a hit. It's time to go. So I'm thinking in my mind, it's time to go back to Broadway. I know Broadway. I know New York City. So I packed my bags. I got the message, it's time to go now. So August of this time last year this time, I packed my buggy and drove cross country. I was headed back to New York. And I made a stop in Nashville, and I'm from Nashville originally. My sister was selling the house that my father and mother lived in. My father transitioned in 2013. My mother had since then moved to Atlanta to be closer with my sister, and my brother, had moved into a assisted living facility. So this house was really special. It was on the parcel of land that my father grew up on. And next to it was where my beloved Granny lived. Granny taught me hymns and spirituals, anthems when I was about 3 and 4 years old. I'm the baby, so I stayed with Granny while my parents were at work and while my brother and sister were in high school. So I went back and I stayed in that house until it sold, which ended up being 3 weeks. And I remember I would go into meditation and I would hear Spirit say, just go and walk in every room and pray. And I like to pray and I like meditation, but I like being on the move. But this was interesting. I had already written this curriculum on emotional literacy and learning, and all I heard was go and see what may be possible here. I said, okay, God, but you know it's going to be a short period of time because I got to get back to Broadway. So I got a meeting with one of the officials. He's a student support officer for the Nashville public school system, and I sat down and I got midway through my presentation and he said, let me make a phone call. So he calls the principal of this school, K through 4. And he says, I have this gentleman here. He's teaching young men and women emotional literacy and learning. He has a curriculum. I want you to meet with him. So I meet with him. And he says, when can you start? I said, I can start anytime. I said, who am I going to be working with? He said, I have selected 14 of my best 3rd and 4th graders. You want to meet them? I said, sure. So I walk into the room, and as soon as I walk in, there's chaos everywhere. It's running around the room. They're chasing one another, and I walk in, and they give a quick glance to this stranger. They look at me, they scan me, and they continue running around the room. So in the midst of this, he says, here they are. And I just take a short glance up. And I say, is this what you've gotten me into, God? Because this is surely not what I thought I was going to step into. There was something inside of me that knew that that's exactly where I was supposed to be, though. He says, can you start next week, next Friday? And without hesitation, I said yes. I had no idea what I was jumping into, you see. All of these kids, these young kids, 3rd and 4th graders. And I couldn't help but think, I was once a third and fourth grader. And growing up, me and my dad, it was tumultuous. It was at that third and fourth grade level where I was almost at the verge of giving up on the relationship between me and my father. But I had one more thing to share with him. Dad, I made straight A's on my report card. My father was born in 1925. By the time I came along in 1969, that was a big gap. He was a man of order. But he was emotionally vacant. And by the time I came along, I sprung out and onto the earth fully self-expressed. I knew no strangers. I'd walk up to somebody and I'd say, "Hey, how you doing? My name's Charles. What's your name?" And in the South, some of you may know that a child is normally seen and not heard. That was the order of the day. I didn't care anything about that. "Hi, my name's Charles. What's your name? Where are you from?" And I would get in trouble every time. And it would be my father. "You don't go up to people and say things like that. Little boys stay in their place." I thought my father hung the moon. Run up to him and grab his pant leg. "Daddy, come out and play with me." He'd whisk my hand away. "I don't have time to play with you. Stop running around touching on people. Little boys don't do that." So by the time I was a third and fourth grader, I had come to the conclusion that there's something in this that I may not be getting, so I need to switch and become somebody else. Something's wrong with me. And so I did. Sports became the order of the day. I had to be tough. Touching people and crying, that's not how I'm supposed to be. So I became this super athlete. Ran track and I played football and I became an all-city and all-state honorable mention football player. And I went to college on a football scholarship. And I remember the day that I signed my letter of intent. I was hoping during the process that I would have my father's approval. And so yet again, one last try, I said, "Daddy, do you think I'm making the right decision? Go where you want to go." I tried for years and years after that. I did, but I was growing cold and resentment was settling in. Graduated from college, got a job with IBM as a marketing representative. Oh, goody. This'll do it. I'm becoming a man now, you see. So I go home. I'm living in Memphis, going home to Nashville to see my parents. And I know my mother and my grandmother, they're going to champion whatever I do because they've always done so. But I wanted to get the approval and the say-so of my dad. So I run in and I tell Mom, I said, "I like my job." And I said, "And Daddy, by the way, did you know I got picked up? I got a job with IBM as a marketing representative." And he looks at me and he says, "That's nice." And I was driving back to Memphis and I saw this billboard on the side and it said, "Jesus cares for you." And I pulled over to the side and I looked at the billboard and I said, "I don't care if Jesus cares for me. I want my daddy to care for me." It had gotten to the point where I had settled into this congealed, almost concretized resentment of my father, which had turned into a slight hatred. Didn't want to be around him, hated going home for Thanksgiving. Anytime that there was family around, or the propensity or the likelihood that he would be there, I tried to stay away. Corporate America didn't work out for me. So I left IBM, ended up with another corporate outfit, and a year later they fired me. Had moved to Atlanta with this company. I didn't know what to do now. I wanted to call him so badly and say, "Daddy, What should I do? What do you think I did wrong? What can I do to get back on my feet? Instead, I started singing open mic at this jazz club. Granny had taught me a lot of those songs, and I had heard a lot of them growing up. And this gentleman comes up to me and he says, "That's interesting." He said, "When you sing, the room changes." I said, "It does." That is interesting. He said, "Have you ever thought about musical theater?" I said, "No, I've never thought about musical theater. I'm a football player. We don't think about musical theater." I said, "What is musical theater?" Gave me a little indication about what it was. He said, "You ought to try out. You ought to go for an audition." I didn't know what an audition was. He said, "Get a headshot." I got a headshot, walked in, and they gave me sides. This is interesting to me. All you have to do is just read them and pretend like you're in a situation, and I booked everything. I booked the lead in everything that I did, and I got a big break, and during the break, I don't know what it was, but there was this voice said, "You're ready, you're ready, you're ready," and I thought, I'm ready for the big stage. And what's the biggest stage? The big stage is Broadway. I think I'll go to New York and be on Broadway. Well, there's one person you have to clear everything with if you're going to move out of the South and that far away and move to New York, and that's your mother. And she had championed everything that I had done. But when I called her, this is what she had to say. My mother always knew when I was trying to throw her a curveball. I was a baby. I knew how to. I was a master manipulator. And I called my mother and I said, "Mom, guess what?" She said, I said, "I'm going to move to New York and be on Broadway." She said, "Let me get something right. You had a job with IBM, making all that money, that fast track, and all of those benefits. And you left IBM and you went to another company with the same type of scenario, and you got fired. Now you're telling me you're moving to New York to be on Broadway, the most unstable job there is in the entire world. I want you to do me a favor, son. I want you to go and find those yellow pages." I said, "I have them." She said, "Go to the back where the business section is and thumb all the way down to the letter P." I said, "I'm there." She said, "Find the word psychiatrist, and I want you to call the first listing. Make an appointment. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. You go in and tell them all your troubles. And when you come out, you'll be okay, because you've lost your mind." I said, "I will, Mom. It's one thing. I've already purchased my ticket. I have to go to New York." I could not articulate to anybody what was pulling me, but I had to go. And this thing called music was pulling me. And I arrived in New York July 6, 1996. And I remember going out on the edge of 87th Street between Central Park West and Columbus, and I declared, "I'm home now." And in the back of my mind, I heard, "And I'm far away from him." A month later, I got the national tour of Jesus Christ Superstar with Ted Neely, Carl Anderson, the original Jesus and Judas, and I played Simon. And we did a 6-month tour. We were on our way from Casper, Wyoming, all the way back to Long Beach, California, on a sleeper bus. And I got about 2 good hours of sleep and thought I'd go up and start talking to the bus driver. And we're riding along, and all of a sudden, something whizzes past the bus. I didn't know what it was, but it looked interesting, so I told him, I said, "Speed up a little bit, speed up a little bit. Find that thing that just whizzed by the bus." And we got up to it, and I said, "What is that?" He said, "I think it's a tumbleweed, but I'm not sure." I said, "I've never seen a tumbleweed in person before, only in the movies." So we continue our conversation, and here comes out of my right periphery, I can see it coming towards the bus. So that's odd. I'll take a quick peek and see what this is. And I did, and I turned and looked, and there it is. the face of my father. A couple of hours later, we stopped for a breakfast break, and there's a couple with a young child in front of them. The mother asks the child, "What would you like for breakfast?" The child responds, but I didn't hear the child's voice. I heard my father's voice. And I ran to the men's room, and I went into this fit. I said, "Why are you following me? I thought I left you in Nashville, far away." Get back to New York off tour. It's January 1997, and I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, my Harlem apartment, and something says, "Call him. Call him now." And I pick up the telephone. I find all the courage that I have inside of me, and my mother answers the phone, and I said, "Mommy, is Daddy there?" She said, "Yeah, he's right here." I said, "Let me speak to him." My father answers the phone in that same voice that I remember. That same voice. "Hello." And all of that courage rushed out of me, and all I could remember was what he had said, what he had done, the emotional trauma. And I said, "Daddy, do you remember saying this to me? Do you remember telling me that I wasn't going to get a scholarship? Do you remember saying any of those things to me? Do you remember?" And he says, "No, wait a minute. I think you got the wrong person. I never said any of things like that to you." And I heard the voice say, "Say it. Say it." And I said, "Daddy, I forgive you." Silence. And here comes another rant. I said, "You can't remember that. How about this? Do you remember when you told me, when you said this, you wouldn't even come to see me play? I came to see you. Say it." I hear the voice again. "Say it. Tell him. Tell him." And I said, "Daddy, I love you. I always have, and I always will." Silence. I hung up the phone and I cried myself to sleep. And I woke up and I heard this voice say, "Congratulations." Congratulations. Congratulations for what? You did it. You set the sacred covenant in motion. I said, "He didn't say anything back to me." It wasn't for him. It was for you. From that point on, every time I saw my dad, every time I heard him in the background, I would say, "Mom, let me speak to Daddy." And at the end of the conversation, I'd rush, but I say, "Daddy, I love you. I'll talk to you soon, okay?" And his answer was always the same. In 2007, my mother calls me and she says, "Well, your father's been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. The doctor says it's at the point where he has to go on dialysis, and he has told the doctor that he is not going on dialysis. And the doctor says, well, if he doesn't, he won't be here for Christmas. Can you talk to him?" And I said, "Yes, I can. I can." So my father answers, says, "So Daddy, how you doing? Fair middling?" I said, "So Mom tells me that they want you to go on dialysis." He says, "Mm-hmm." I said, "And you've chosen not to?" He says, "That's right." I said, "Well, I came to tell you this is your life, and you get to choose. We'd love for you to stay around a little while longer, but if you don't, I want you to know I'm so grateful for you as my daddy." "Mm-hmm," he says. My mother calls me about 10:30 that night. She says, "What did you say to him?" I said, "I told him that it's his choice and that we're grateful for having him, but if he chooses not to stay, we'll be all right." She says, "Well, he's staying." I'm glad he did. From that point until 2013, my father and I had the most beautiful relationship. It wasn't without pain. 2009, my father comes home from one of his sessions, and I'm at home. It's November, and he's shuffling back to his room. I have his shawl because he says it gets so cold. His blood is so thin. And while he's shuffling down the hall, I'm thinking to myself, where is that man that was 6 foot, tall, strong? I'm almost as tall as him now. He's been over. And all of a sudden he turns and he looks at me. He says, oh yes, there's my baby. Daddy loves you. And I'm struck. There is this line that I'm straddling. There is that side of the line that says, where was that when I was 3 and 4 years old, the third and fourth grader that was pawing at you, please come out and play with me, the 13, 14-year-old. What should I do? Everything seems like it's spinning so fast. Where should I go to college? Where was that then? I was angry, but then the other side spoke. And that voice said, what about the covenant? He's ready. Are you? And I took a deep breath and I said, yes, Daddy, I love you too. Ooh, it took everything inside of me to say that. Last 5 days of my father's life, I was right there at Vanderbilt. And we began to talk in the other realm. Went into meditation and I said, so what was this all about, Dad? I don't understand it. He says, well, had our unique troubles. Everybody does. But we can leave this legacy together. You go out and teach them how to get through it, to navigate the pain, the disappointment, to recognize the triggers. And by the way, I couldn't tell you that I loved you the way that you wanted me to, son. Didn't know how to tell you I was proud of you. I wanted you to stay out of trouble because I knew you were going to do well, but I didn't know what to say. 'Cause my daddy never told me. But I love you, and I'll be able to travel with you wherever you go from now on. All I can say is that it comes up when I go home, when I go back to that place where they lived. I still wonder why my father never held my hand, walked me into church with him, why he never said, I'm proud of you in person. But what I will say is that everything comes around and the pain does turn into the promise. The first week I'm at school with these young men, a young man walks up to me and he says, Mr. Holt, Mr. Holt. And I look at him. He's clutching. Just like I used to clutch my dad. And I look at him and he says, I have something to tell you. And I no longer see him. I see me. That third grader. And I take a deep breath and I say, what is it? I want to see it. There are no mistakes. We have been pruned for this moment. And I say to him, what is it that you want? He said, I just wanted you to come and see what I was doing. And all I hear is he just wants you to care. Somebody to love and care. And I remember my father. And I said, Daddy, thank you so much. It was painful. Still a little residue of the pain, but I understand now. And I can hear my father in my meditation say, son, I'm so proud of you. You're on your path. Every now and then we need that. I need it. And I think as we look around, we see these things happening. And perhaps, just perhaps, if it's just the world saying, I just wish somebody would care about me. I just wish. Let's close our eyes. I invite Richard to come up, and as we take the breath together, we become conscious of understanding that we're right here, right now, and right where we are is exactly where we're supposed to be. Everything that is moving through us right now has come to give us indication of just how wonderful and magnificent and marvelous we are. How dynamic this life is. All of what we call the ups and downs, the good and bad, the over and unders, it's all so wonderful. Oh, divine spirit, magnificent principle of ultimate reality, how great thou art. I bask in this ocean of gratitude, this divine place of knowing that I'm here for the divine purpose unfolding in my life, and I'm here to give it away, knowing that it is inexhaustible good that comes back to me. As I speak this for everyone under the sound of my voice, everyone listening. Oh, how beautiful, how marvelous, how mystical and magical this life is. The breath that I breathe, this divine presence is ever flowing. Oh, yes. And perhaps it is just right now that we tap into our sacred covenant, revisiting yet again that yes that is always beckoning us to call forth, to give it permission to be every single thing that it is, for us to become the beloved community, for us to become every single thing and reveal and demonstrate the face of this divine presence. I say yes. I say yes. And as we take the breath together, this holy breath, I let it be, and so it is. Amen.